The host seemingly did not want the compliment at first, but his demeanor changed later on. Steve Harvey usually slams Family Feud contestants for their absurd answers on the show. But despite all that, fans and players love the host, and he often gets compliments apart from occasional jokes about him. However, he once had a completely unexpected reaction to a contestant's compliment. Harvey seemed to be taken aback and was quite scandalized. That is not something viewers of the show are used to when it comes to his reactions. Harvey asked a question: if Steve Harvey were the next James Bond, what would he do better than the previous Bonds? A contestant named Noah got to his buzzer first and said, "Pick up more women." Most people would take that compliment with a degree of satisfaction, but Harvey is not like most people. His eyes were wide open as he shook his head from side to side, indicating that he would do no such thing. Either way, the answer was number 5 on the board. Once the host saw that, his demeanor changed. Now, he looked proud. "You'd better know that." "That's a damn fact," he said with a smile on his face. Next up to answer was a contestant named Charlotte. Her answer was, his famous line, "Bond, James Bond." Unfortunately, that was not on the board. This gave the Wynn family a chance to play further. After that, Mimi answered, "Shoot a gun." However, that was not on the board. Dan was next, and he answered, "Obviously dress." The host liked that answer, and it was up on the board, too. A woman named Nene was next, and she answered, "How about driving a fast car?" However, that was not on the board either. A man named Mike was next, and he answered, "His acting." That was not on the board either, and the family conceded all 3 strikes in a matter of moments. This gave the Love family a great chance to steal the game. Charlotte stepped up, hoping to make amends for earlier. "Steve, he would be funnier," she said. Harvey liked that answer as well, and sure enough, it was up on the board. The Love family won the game as a result, despite not having the best of starts. Fans of the show loved the idea of the host playing Bond and made their feelings known in the comments section. So basically, if Steve Harvey was the next James Bond, it'd be less like a James Bond movie and more like an Ice Cube production, one fan commented. "Directors better be hiring Steve Harvey for the next James Bond film, or I am gonna revolt and boycott the films," added another. "I really wanna see this happen. Please Steve, make a spin-off of the first movie or something please," a viewer mentioned. For more than a decade, Family Feud fans have watched Steve Harvey react to wild answers, hilarious misunderstandings, and unpredictable contestants. But every now and then, an unexpected moment comes along that even he isn't prepared for, one that stops him in his tracks, wipes the grin off his face, and reminds him why he loves hosting the show as much as he does. That's exactly what unfolded during a recent taping when a contestant didn't just give an answer, she delivered a full-on compliment directly to Steve Harvey, catching him completely off guard and leaving the audience cheering, laughing, and awing all at once. The question that started it all. The moment took place during the Fast Money warm-up round, when Steve stepped up to the podium and read the question with his usual theatrical flair. "Name something that gets better with age." It was one of those classic survey prompts, simple, broad, and always guaranteed to spark creative chaos. Steve glanced up, expecting the typical answers: wine, cheese, friendships, maybe even my husband depending on the contestant. What he didn't expect was to become the answer himself. Standing opposite him was Denise, a bubbly, charismatic player whose confidence and energy had already made her a crowd favorite. When the buzzer sounded, she hit it hard enough to make the podium shake and practically shouted her answer. "Steve Harvey." Silence. Then chaos. For a full second, the studio fell strangely silent, just Steve staring at her, blinking, trying to process what had just happened. He even looked down at his card as if to check whether he had misread the question. Then, as the audience realized what she had said, the room exploded with laughter and applause. Steve froze, both hands clutching the top of the podium, eyes wide and mouth hanging open. His reaction alone was enough to send the audience into a second wave of hysterics. "Ma'am," he finally managed to say, squinting at her. "Now how in the world did I end up in this answer?" Denise wasn't fazed. She flashed a proud smile and said, "Steve, you're like a fine wine, you only get better every year." That was it. The audience lost it. Steve backed away from the podium, laughing so hard he had to bend over and put his hands on his knees. Steve Harvey's priceless comeback. When Steve finally gathered himself, he walked back toward the contestant with that classic "here we go" expression plastered across his face. "Denise," he said, pointing at her dramatically, "you know good and well the survey ain't samey. They might have put wine, they might have put money, they might have put Jesus. But ain't nobody put Steve Harvey. Denise just shrugged. Well, they should have, she joked. Because you aging like luxury. Steve took off his glasses and waved them in the air like a flag, pacing across the stage. Lord, have mercy, he said. This woman trying to get me in trouble on national TV. The laughter didn't stop for almost a minute. The judge's decision makes it even funnier. Once the crowd calmed down, Steve turned to the board and gave the signal. Let's check it, he said dramatically. Show me. Steve Harvey. Of course, there was no chance the board would light up, but the judges had a little fun of their own. Instead of the usual X or blank space, the board flashed. Nice try, necktie emoji, winking face emoji. The audience burst into laughter again, and Steve stared at the screen in disbelief. Oh, see, this the problem with this show, he said, pointing up at the board. The judges up there flirting now too. Denise laughed and clapped her hands. See? Even the board agrees you're aging beautifully. A heartwarming moment behind the humor. Once the playful chaos died down, Steve let the humor give way to sincerity, something he often does when a moment calls for it. You know what, he said, turning to Denise, I really appreciate that. The room quieted as his tone softened. I joke around, I clown, I act a fool every day on this stage. But I love when people send a little love my way. So thank you. Denise nodded. You deserve it, Steve. The audience applauded warmly, creating one of those rare Family Feud moments where genuine sweetness mixes perfectly with laughter. The internet reacts, this is why we love Steve. As expected, the clip made its way online, first through a few fan accounts, then across YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. Within hours, it had gone viral. Comments poured in. The way Steve froze, smiley face emoji, smiley face emoji, smiley face emoji. Denise came to the show with confidence. Not the board saying nice try. I'm wheezing. This is exactly why Steve Harvey is the best host on TV. He really does age like fine wine though, eyes emoji, fire emoji. The moment quickly became one of the show's most replayed clips of the week, sparking memes, fan art, and playful debates about whether Steve should have been counted as a legitimate answer. Steve Harvey reflects in his dressing room. In a behind-the-scenes digital clip posted later that week, Steve reflected on the moment while getting touched up by the makeup team. She really said me, he laughed. I ain't never seen that one before. I mean, I've been called a lot of things on this show, but nobody ever told me I get better with age. He paused, cracked a grin, and added. Well, I mean, I know it's true. But you can't just be saying it in front of my wife like that. The clip racked up more views than the actual episode preview. A Family Feud moment fans won't forget. Family Feud is famous for delivering spontaneous hilarity, but this moment stood out because it blended everything viewers love. Steve's larger-than-life reactions. A contestant with bold, joyful confidence. A joke that turned unexpectedly sweet. A host who knows how to turn chaos into comedy magic. In a show filled with unusual answers, Denise's playful compliment will go down as one of the most charming curveballs ever thrown at Steve Harvey. And judging by the way he laughed, blushed, and paced around the stage trying to recover, it might also be one of his favorites.